Deep in the icy forest, a woman is tied to a tree with a tiny puppy. Each breath could be their last, only silence and the quiet passage of time. Millions away, a Navy SEAL dog left this world until a storm revealed something special to it. It entered the forest not to become a hero, but simply to help itself erase the pain of the past. A fateful encounter that changed the destinies of everyone involved. Before we begin, please let me know where you're watching from. Leave a comment below. Snow fell hard and sideways in the northern forests of Maine, erasing distance, sound, and certainty, until the world felt reduced to breath, cold, and whatever choices a person made when the storm refused to stop. The man had chosen this place because it asked nothing of him. His cabin stood alone beyond the last maintained road, surrounded by spruce and pine bent under fresh weight. At 38, Ethan Walker still carried the unmistakable geometry of a former Navy SEAL. Broad shoulders, compact strength, movements controlled to the point of habit. His face was sharply angled, jaw set, cheekbones pronounced, a short, untrimmed beard darkened with early threads of gray. His eyes were pale, watchful, the kind shaped by years of scanning danger before it announced itself. He did not come here to be found. He came here to remain unseen. Ethan had once been a SEAL K-9 handler, a role that demanded trust deeper than speech. Years earlier, during a night operation overseas, a misjudged corridor and a delayed order had cost his K-9 partner its life. The dog had followed him without hesitation, and the silence afterward had never truly left. Since then, Ethan lived without animals, without teams, without commands. Solitude felt safer than responsibility. Out here, storms could not accuse him of failure. That night he had stepped outside to secure a loose shutter when the wind shifted. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but his body recognized it before thought did. The forest carried a sound that did not belong to weather, a strained, broken exhale, too irregular to be wind, too fragile to be dismissed. Ethan froze, listening. Experience had taught him that hesitation could kill, but so could ignoring instinct. He followed the sound into the trees, each step sinking into fresh drifts that pulled at his boots. The cold cut through layers with surgical precision, numbing fingers, tightening breath. Visibility collapsed to a few yards, branches looming and vanishing like figures undecided about their intentions. Then he saw her. The woman was bound upright against the trunk of a tall pine, her wrists secured with synthetic cord pulled tight enough to bruise, but not break skin. She was young, early 30s, tall and slender with a runner's build rather than softness, her posture instinctively protective even in collapse. Her dark brown hair, cut just past the shoulders for practicality, had come loose and frozen into uneven strands against her cheeks. Her skin was pale, almost translucent with cold, lips faintly blue. Yet there was nothing helpless in her face. Even unconscious, her brow remained faintly drawn, jaw clenched as if resisting surrender. Pressed tightly against her chest, shielded by the front of her torn coat, was a German shepherd puppy, no more than 3 months old. His fur was soaked and matted, black and tan dulled by ice, his body trembling violently as he struggled to conserve warmth. His ears, still too large for his head, drooped unevenly, and his paws looked oversized, clumsy with youth. One eye fluttered open briefly, dark, glossy, alert with instinct rather than understanding. The puppy let out a thin, breathless whimper, more vibration than sound. Ethan understood immediately what had been done here. This was not a robbery gone wrong, nor a random act of cruelty. The bindings were clean, deliberate. No blood, no signs of struggle. Whoever left her here had counted on the storm to finish the work quietly. Hypothermia would erase intent. Time would erase evidence. Winter had been chosen as executioner. He moved without ceremony. Cutting the cord, he caught her weight as her legs buckled, guiding her carefully down into the snow. She was lighter than she looked, her body already losing strength, muscles slack with exposure. He wrapped his coat around her shoulders, then cupped the puppy against her chest again, understanding instinctively what had kept her alive this long. Shared heat, shared breath, a fragile, stubborn refusal to let go. The woman stirred as he lifted her, eyelids fluttering open, just long enough to reveal dark eyes, sharp with awareness even through exhaustion. She tried to speak, failed, then tightened her grip on the puppy as if afraid he might be taken from her. Ethan adjusted his hold, lowering his voice without thinking, tone steady, grounded. "You're not alone," he said. He wasn't sure whether he was speaking to her or himself. The walk back to the cabin felt longer than distance allowed. The storm thickened, wind forcing snow sideways, erasing their tracks almost as quickly as they were made. The woman sagged against him, breath shallow but present. The puppy pressed into the hollow of her throat, his small body radiating what little warmth it could offer. Ethan focused on steps, on rhythm, on keeping all three of them moving. Inside the cabin, warmth returned slowly, deliberately. Ethan laid her near the hearth, careful not to shock skin already numbed. He replaced frozen layers with dry wool, monitoring her breathing with practiced calm. The puppy whimpered again, then settled, curling instinctively into the space beneath her chin. Only when the woman's breaths grew marginally steadier did Ethan allow himself to sit back, heart pounding in a way the cold could not explain. When she woke fully, it was not with panic. She inhaled sharply, eyes scanning the room with immediate assessment. Walls reinforced, supplies stacked with intent, absence of decoration. This was a place built for endurance, not comfort. Her name, when she finally spoke it, came quietly. Claire Bennett. The way she said it suggested the name carried weight she no longer trusted. Claire was a self-made technology billionaire, 32 years old, her wealth built on data systems designed to detect irregularities others missed. Years of operating in male-dominated boardrooms had shaped her into someone precise and reserved, trust earned slowly, independence guarded fiercely. She had come north alone after uncovering patterns tied to illegal land transfers, routes that vanished each winter under snow, records altered, oversight delayed, until spring erased accountability. She had underestimated how quickly attention could turn lethal. The puppy, she explained between controlled breaths, had not been part of any plan. She had found him abandoned days earlier, shivering beside a closed rest stop. She meant to leave him at the next shelter. She never did. "He wouldn't stop following me," she said softly, one hand resting protectively over his back. "And I couldn't make myself walk away." Outside, the storm continued to press against the cabin walls, relentless and indifferent. Ethan listened as Claire spoke, not interrupting, not offering reassurance he did not yet trust. Somewhere beyond the trees, the people who had tied her to that pine believed winter had already solved their problem. They were wrong. And as the fire crackled low and steady, Ethan understood with quiet certainty that the storm was not the most dangerous thing moving through the forest tonight. Morning never truly arrived. The storm only loosened its grip enough to allow light to bleed weakly through the frost-coated windows, turning the cabin interior a muted gray where firelight and daylight argued without resolution. Claire Bennett sat upright now, wrapped in layers of wool and thermal blankets, her back resting against the rough-hewn log wall. Fatigue hollowed her face, but it had not dulled her awareness. Even weakened, she held herself with a contained precision, spine straight, shoulders drawn in rather than slumped, the posture of someone long accustomed to remaining composed while decisions were being weighed around her. Her skin, still pale from cold exposure, showed faint color returning to her cheeks, and her dark brown eyes, clear, analytical, tracked Ethan's movements with quiet attention rather than fear. The German Shepherd puppy slept against her abdomen, curled into a tight, instinctive spiral. Leo's breathing was shallow but steady now, his small rib cage rising and falling in a rhythm that matched Claire's own. Up close, the puppy's youth was unmistakable. Oversized paws splayed awkwardly, ears folded unevenly, as if undecided about growing up. A faint pinkness still visible along his nose, where fur had not fully darkened. He twitched occasionally, paws flexing in sleep, the kind of reflex born from survival rather than play. Ethan moved deliberately through the cabin, checking seals around the windows, adjusting the fire, listening more than looking. The storm outside had not ended. It had simply changed character. The wind no longer screamed. It whispered, dragging snow along the walls in a steady, deliberate hiss. Ethan trusted this phase less. Loud storms announced themselves. Quiet ones concealed approach. Claire broke the silence first. Her voice was hoarse, shaped by cold and dehydration, but steady. "They didn't expect me to survive the night." It was not a question. She spoke with the calm certainty of someone reconstructing a system failure. Ethan nodded once, but did not answer. He waited. People who had been hunted needed space to tell the truth in their own order. Claire continued, fingers absently brushing the puppy's fur, grounding herself in the warmth still there. She explained who she was without embellishment. A self-made technology executive whose wealth came not from consumer products or spectacle, but from back-end systems, data reconciliation engines, anomaly detection platforms used by governments and corporations alike. Years spent uncovering fraud had shaped her into someone methodical, cautious by habit, skeptical by necessity. She trusted patterns more than people, numbers more than assurances. The investigation had begun as an irregularity buried inside land acquisition records, parcels transferred too cleanly, too quickly, always just before winter shut access down. Timber permits approved without inspections. Transport manifests that existed digitally but vanished in physical audits come spring. Each data point alone meant nothing. Together they formed a quiet, repeating geometry that suggested design. "I didn't come to expose anyone," Claire said. "I came to confirm whether the system was lying or whether people were." She admitted her mistake without hesitation. She had traveled alone, believing anonymity safer than security. No convoy, no guards, no digital footprint beyond what she controlled herself. Confidence had not blinded her. Efficiency had. She underestimated how quickly scrutiny could turn personal. Ethan listened, his expression unreadable. He had heard variations of this before, in different countries, different languages. Systems did not fail quietly. People made them fail on purpose. Claire explained the fail-safes she had triggered before losing signal. Her systems were designed to escalate alerts in tiers. The first layer, activated when her biometric data showed prolonged stress or loss of movement, sent encrypted backups to distributed servers overseas. That alert did not notify authorities, it only preserved information. The second layer required confirmation tied to location data and external verification. That threshold had not yet been reached. "I didn't want anyone showing up too early," she said. "Early attention gets erased." Ethan understood the logic immediately. Premature intervention would have warned whoever was operating behind the scenes. Silence for a time was protection. As Claire spoke, Ethan's mind worked through implications. Whoever had left her tied to that tree believed winter was enough. That meant they were disciplined, organized, confident that time, not force, would finish the work. Those were not traits of opportunists. Leo stirred, releasing a small questioning sound before settling again. Claire adjusted her grip instinctively, drawing him closer. "He kept me awake," she said quietly. "Every time I felt myself slipping, he moved, pressed closer, made noise. I couldn't let myself go while he was still breathing." Ethan looked at the puppy more closely then. Survival had etched itself early into the animal's instincts. Even now, in warmth, Leo slept lightly, muscles tensed beneath soft fur. He was not fearless. He was persistent. Ethan recognized the difference. The cabin creaked as wind pushed against it. Snow shifted on the roof with a low, unsettling groan. Ethan moved to the rear wall, running his hand along the timber where old repairs intersected newer reinforcements. The place was sturdy, built for weather, not siege. That was when he noticed the first inconsistency. Near the back door, snow had drifted inward in a pattern too clean, too narrow. Someone, or something, had been close enough to disturb it. Not recently, but not long ago either. He crouched, examining the threshold. A faint scuff mark, barely visible beneath powder. Intentional carelessness or deliberate message. Either way, it meant one thing. "They're coming back," Ethan said. Claire did not react outwardly. Her eyes sharpened, focus narrowing. "To confirm," she said. "Yes?" "To erase uncertainty," she replied. They shared a look then, a brief alignment of understanding. This was no longer about rescue. It was about timing. Ethan explained the reality without drama. The cabin's location was no longer secure. Even if they fortified and waited, whoever had orchestrated this would return with patience and numbers. Weather favored them. Terrain did not. Claire absorbed this, nodding slowly. "If they confirm I'm alive," she said, "they'll escalate. Not here. Somewhere else. With witnesses?" Ethan's jaw tightened. He had seen this progression before. Silence followed by precision. Precision followed by inevitability. The fire popped softly. Leo lifted his head, ears twitching, sensing the shift in tension without understanding its source. Claire stroked his back once, steadying both of them. They did not argue. They planned. Claire confirmed that her system would automatically elevate its alert level if corroborating evidence, location confirmation, third-party signal interference, or recovered operational data was introduced. Without that, authorities would wait. The system was designed to avoid false positives at all costs. Ethan considered the terrain beyond the cabin. Old logging routes. A narrow mountain pass used decades earlier, now accessible only in winter when the ground hardened enough to support weight. A place where movement funneled whether one intended it or not. "We can give your system what it needs," Ethan said. "But not from here." Outside, the storm shifted again, snow beginning to fall more evenly, less violently. It was the kind of weather that concealed tracks while allowing movement, perfect for someone who did not want to be seen. Claire drew a slow breath. The decision cost her visibly. She was still weak, still recovering, but her voice did not waver. "If staying guarantees they control the next move," she said, "then leaving is the only way to choose anything at all." Ethan nodded. It was not courage that impressed him. It was clarity. Leo pressed himself closer to Claire's side, responding to tone more than words. Ethan reached out once, briefly adjusting the puppy's position to better trap heat. The touch was careful, restrained, as if he feared familiarity might unlock memories he had sealed away. They would not move yet, not until the storm shifted again. But the truth was now exposed beneath the snow, and neither of them believed it would remain buried much longer. Night fell without ceremony, the kind that arrived fully formed, swallowing the forest whole and pressing darkness tight against the cabin walls. Snow no longer fell in sheets. It drifted softly now, patient and deceptive, muting sound and softening edges until the world felt deliberately unfinished. Ethan sensed the change long before he saw evidence of it. Years of moving through hostile terrain had taught his body to register absence as clearly as motion. The wind no longer scraped the trees the same way. The forest had gone watchful. He stood near the front window, shoulders squared, posture relaxed only in appearance, pale eyes scanning the tree line where shadow layered upon shadow. The short beard along his jaw hid the tightening of muscle beneath, a familiar restraint returning to his face like an old language he had never truly forgotten. Behind him, Claire sat wrapped in blankets, her back straight despite exhaustion, one arm curved protectively around the puppy. Leo was awake now, eyes open and dark, tracking movement with the unrefined seriousness of youth. His small body trembled, not from cold this time, but from instinct. He did not whine. He pressed closer, nose tucked beneath Claire's collarbone, breathing shallow and fast. Survival had already taught him more than comfort ever could. Ethan moved quietly to the back of the cabin, crouching near the door. There it was. A thin wire stretched low across the snow, barely visible, positioned not to trap, but to test. A probe. Someone checking whether the place was still occupied, whether panic had replaced discipline. He followed the line with his eyes to a second disturbance near the tree line, a shadow slightly darker than the rest, where snow had been brushed aside with deliberate care. "They're close," Ethan said softly. Claire did not ask how close. She shifted her grip on Leo, jaw tightening, eyes narrowing with calculation rather than fear. She had lived long enough in hostile rooms to recognize escalation when it arrived quietly. "They won't rush," she said. "They'll wait for us to make a mistake." Ethan nodded once. "So we won't." He extinguished the lantern nearest the window, plunging the room into deeper shadow. Firelight remained low, banked carefully so it did not silhouette movement. Every action was economical, deliberate. This was not a man looking for a fight. This was a man shaping space. The first sound came from the north side of the cabin. A footstep, careful but not cautious enough. The snow gave slightly under weight, then stilled. Ethan shifted position, counting seconds, measuring breath. He recognized the pattern now. There were at least two, maybe three. They moved like professionals, spacing controlled, angles covered, confidence built on repetition rather than adrenaline. A shape detached itself from the trees, resolving slowly into a man, moving low and steady. He was tall, broad through the shoulders, his silhouette angular beneath layered winter gear. When he stepped into faint moonlight, Ethan caught details. Late 30s, lean build hardened by exposure rather than muscle, face narrow with sharp cheekbones, and a short beard trimmed close to the skin. His eyes scanned constantly, calculating rather than searching. This was not a local hunter. This was employment. The man raised a hand slightly, signaling to someone unseen. Ethan waited. He always waited. The second figure approached from the opposite side, shorter, stockier, movements heavier. Less patient, less experienced. The imbalance mattered. It always did. Inside, Leo shifted again, releasing a soft, involuntary sound. Claire stilled instantly, one hand covering the puppy's muzzle, her body angling to shield him. Her breathing slowed with effort, each inhale measured. She understood now that silence was not absence. It was defense. The first shot shattered the night without warning, splintering wood near the back wall. Not aimed to kill, a test, a demand for response. Ethan was already moving, rolling away from the window as fragments rained down, using the noise to mask his repositioning. He did not return fire. Not yet. The second shot followed, closer this time, followed by a pause. The pause was the mistake. Ethan slipped out through the side door, keeping low, the snow swallowing his movement the way he knew it would. Cold bit through his gloves, sharp and grounding. He circled wide, using the trees to break line of sight, closing distance without urgency. The forest was his ally now. He had learned to read it when younger men relied on equipment. The stockier man advanced too far, confidence outpacing caution. Ethan closed the gap in seconds, colliding low and hard, driving the man into the snow before a shout could form. The impact knocked breath loose in a sharp, panicked exhale. Ethan's forearm pressed across the man's throat, weight controlled, precise. He did not strike again. He restrained, disarmed, bound with efficient movements refined long before this night. Up close, the man's face was flushed with cold and surprise, eyes wide and furious rather than frightened. He was younger than Ethan had expected, early 30s perhaps, skin-weathered, jaw stubbled unevenly. This was not ideology. This was a job done for money. Ethan searched him quickly, fingers numb but exact. From beneath the man's jacket, he retrieved a compact device, sealed against moisture, its surface scratched from use. The screen flickered faintly, lines of encrypted data cycling through before settling briefly on a coordinate set. Ethan memorized the numbers before powering it down. Inside the cabin, the second attacker fired again, then stopped. Silence returned, heavier than before. Whoever remained understood, now that advantage had shifted. Ethan dragged the restrained man beneath the cabin's overhang, securing him out of sight, then slipped back inside. Claire looked up immediately, eyes locking onto his face, reading outcome without words. When she saw the device in his hand, her expression changed. Not relief, but recognition. "That's it," she said quietly. "That's the last node." Ethan placed the device on the table between them. The firelight caught its edges, revealing scuffs and dents earned through repetition. "It leads somewhere," he said. "A place they don't expect interference." Claire nodded, mind already assembling implications. This was the confirmation her system required. Location data, operational proof, the final pattern aligning. Outside, the remaining attackers withdrew, their retreat disciplined, unhurried. Snow swallowed their tracks as if they had never been there. The storm, indifferent as ever, continued its quiet work. Leo lifted his head, ears twitching, sensing the shift. He whined softly this time, not in fear, but release. Claire exhaled for the first time since the shots began, her shoulders lowering slightly as adrenaline burned off. She pressed her forehead briefly against the puppy's, eyes closing for a fraction of a second. She allowed herself. Ethan remained standing, gaze fixed on the door, posture unchanged. He had seen this before. The first contact was never the last. Whoever had sent those men would not assume Winter had failed twice. "They'll come back," Claire said. "Yes," Ethan replied, "but not tonight." He looked at the device again, then out toward the forest where darkness layered itself patiently among the trees. The night had revealed its truth. The hunters had returned, and in doing so, they had exposed themselves. This was no longer about waiting. Dawn did not arrive with light, only with a thinning of darkness that made edges sharper and mistakes harder to hide. The storm had eased into a disciplined fall, snow descending straight down as if the forest itself had decided to stop shouting and start watching. Ethan stood at the cabin door, shoulders squared beneath his weathered jacket, breath steady despite the cold biting through every seam. His decision had already been made hours ago, long before Claire asked the question he knew would come. The cabin was no longer shelter. It was a marker, the kind that invited return. He had learned in another life that once a position was compromised, staying was not bravery. It was waiting to be surrounded. Claire watched him from the bench near the hearth, wrapped tightly in layered wool. She was still weak, her movements slower than her thoughts, but her posture remained upright, deliberate. Even seated, she carried herself with an understated authority. Tall and lean, shoulders narrow but squared, dark hair tied back clumsily with fingers that still trembled faintly from cold and fatigue. Her skin had regained some color, though faint bruising still traced her wrists where the cord had bitten deep. She did not argue the decision. She understood systems too well to deny when one had shifted against her. "You're certain," she said, not as a challenge, but as confirmation. Ethan nodded. His face, cut with hard angles and framed by a short, rough beard, showed no hesitation. Years ago, an ambush overseas had taught him the cost of trusting walls more than movement. He had survived. Others had not. That lesson had shaped everything that followed. They know where we are. They'll come back with patience in numbers. Weather favors them. Terrain favors us, if we move. Claire looked down at Leo, who was nestled inside the open front of Ethan's jacket now, wrapped in spare cloth and pressed against body heat. The puppy's eyes were open, alert but calm, his small chest rising steadily. At barely 3 months old, he was too young to understand danger, but old enough to sense tension. His ears twitched with every shift of sound, oversized paws flexing against Ethan's chest as if memorizing the rhythm there. "I can walk," Claire said after a moment. Ethan studied her carefully. He saw the truth beneath the statement. She could move, but not fast, not far, not without consequence. He waited anyway. "You won't set the pace," he said. "You won't carry anything, and if you stumble, we stop. No pride." Claire gave a thin, humorless smile. "I left pride in a boardroom years ago." They prepared without wasted motion. Ethan packed light, water, thermal layers, a compact med kit, the encrypted device recovered the night before. Nothing that made noise, nothing that slowed retreat. He disabled the generator, erased obvious signs of occupancy, and scattered snow deliberately across the threshold to confuse timing. He left the fire banked low, not extinguished, letting it die naturally rather than announcing departure. Before leaving, Claire activated her system manually. Her fingers moved with practiced precision across the small device she carried, despite lingering stiffness. The system acknowledged her input silently. No alarms, no signals yet. The design was intentional. It waited for convergence, not hope. They stepped into the forest just as the light shifted again, the world suspended in a narrow window between night and morning. Snow muffled their movement, swallowing sound, blurring outlines. Ethan took point, scanning constantly, choosing routes that avoided open ground and followed natural breaks in the trees where wind scoured drifts thinner. Claire followed several steps behind, her breathing controlled, jaw clenched as she pushed through discomfort without complaint. Leo remained tucked close, a living warmth that grounded both of them. The terrain rose gradually, funneling them toward higher ground. Old logging markers appeared and vanished beneath snow, ghosts of a route abandoned decades earlier. Ethan recognized the shape of the land now, the subtle narrowing, the way the trees crowded closer together. The pass lay ahead, unseen but inevitable. It was the only place winter traffic could move without leaving unmistakable tracks, which made it perfect for those who believed winter erased everything. Claire slowed as the incline steepened, her steps shortening, balance faltering once before she caught herself. Ethan stopped immediately, turning back, steadying her without a word. His grip was firm but restrained, the touch of someone who understood fragility without underestimating strength. "I need 5 breaths," she said quietly. "You have 10, he replied. She nodded, focusing, regaining control. Leo stirred, pressing closer, his small nose nudging against her collarbone as if reminding her of the reason she was still upright. She exhaled slowly, then moved again. As they approached the pass, Claire's device vibrated once, subtle, almost imperceptible. She stopped, eyes dropping to the screen. The system had recognized the coordinates embedded in the encrypted device Ethan carried. Independent verification, environmental confirmation, threshold met. "It's escalating," she said softly. Not an alert, a confirmation. Ethan did not look relieved. He never trusted moments like this. Escalation meant attention. Attention meant pressure. The pass revealed itself gradually, rock walls rising on either side, narrowing the corridor until sky became a pale ribbon overhead. Tire scars etched faintly into ice where snow had drifted unnaturally smooth. Fresh, maintained. Proof without words. They moved into cover along a low rock shelf overlooking the route. Ethan positioned Claire where sightlines converged without exposing her silhouette. He crouched nearby, body angled outward, senses stretched thin. Leo peered out from inside the jacket, eyes wide, absorbing the world in fragments. Metal scent, cold air, vibration beneath stone. Minutes passed, then longer. The forest held its breath again. The sound arrived first. A low vibration through the ground, felt more than heard. Engines, controlled, deliberate. 2 trucks emerged from the far end of the pass, headlights angled low to avoid reflection. Men moved around them with practiced efficiency, faces obscured by hoods and scarves. No shouting, no hurry, confidence born from routine. Claire raised her device, hand steady now, recording automatically. Data streamed, mirrored, transmitted. The system acknowledged silently. Escalation complete. Ethan waited until the moment demanded choice. He exposed just enough movement to draw attention, then withdrew, leading pursuit toward the narrowest point of the pass. He did not run. He guided. The response was immediate. 2 figures broke formation, moving cautiously but decisively. That was enough. Lights flared suddenly at both ends of the pass, white and blinding, cutting through snowfall like blades. Engines died. Doors opened in unison. Voices carried commands sharp and controlled. Not chaos, coordination. Federal agents moved in with rehearsed clarity, weapons trained, angles covered. They were not surprised. They were confirming. Claire lowered her device only when the perimeter locked down. Her shoulders sagged slightly as tension released, exhaustion rushing in behind it. She remained upright, though, watching as concealed compartments were exposed, men restrained, evidence preserved exactly where it stood. Ethan stayed back, neither interfering nor retreating. He observed from cover, understanding that his role ended where accountability began. Leo shifted, releasing a small, uncertain sound. Claire rested her hand against his back, fingers sinking into warming fur. "It's done," she whispered, though she knew it wasn't entirely true. Some consequences lingered longer than storms. Snow continued to fall, softening the scene without erasing it. Winter had tried to hide the truth. Instead, it had delivered it intact. They did not stay long. When the agents signaled withdrawal, Ethan guided Claire back into the trees, leaving no trace behind. The past would remember what happened here, even if no one else ever spoke of it. They moved on, not toward safety, but toward the next necessary step. And for the first time since the storm began, the path ahead felt narrower, but clearer. Spring did not announce itself with warmth, only with honesty. The snow retreated slowly from the forest floor, revealing earth that looked darker for having survived the weight. The air carried the scent of thawed pine and wet stone, and for the first time in months the silence felt earned rather than imposed. The case unraveled without spectacle. Evidence moved through channels designed for patience, not drama. Records aligned, routes closed, accounts frozen. Names that had once hidden behind complexity were reduced to signatures on warrants and sealed containers. There were no press conferences in the woods, no victory speeches carved into the cold. Accountability arrived the way it usually did, quietly, methodically, leaving little behind except absence. Ethan watched the process from a distance, understanding that truth did not need him once it had learned how to stand on its own. Claire returned south when her strength allowed it, not in triumph, but in alignment. Recovery had sharpened her rather than softened her. She moved differently now, slower, more deliberate, as if each step asked permission of the ground. Her tall, lean frame carried faint scars at the wrists, pale lines against skin that had regained its color. Her dark hair, once tied back out of necessity, fell more loosely now, framing a face that remained precise but less guarded. The experience had not made her smaller. It had made her exact. The decision to build Second Watch came not from charity, but recognition. Claire understood systems, and she understood gaps. Rural shelters were often the first to lose funding, the last to receive attention, and the easiest to overlook when weather or distance made oversight inconvenient. Second Watch would be different. It would operate quietly, with redundancy built into every layer: power, communication, transport. A place designed not to rescue dramatically, but to remain present when the first chance failed. She chose the name carefully, not a promise of salvation, a reminder that survival often arrived late and still mattered. The opening took place on a gray morning softened by mist. The building itself was modest, set back from the road, its lines simple and sturdy. No banners, no cameras. Inside, warmth was steady and unhurried. The staff moved with purpose rather than urgency, people shaped by experience more than idealism. One woman, Margaret Hale, ran intake. She was in her late 50s, broad-shouldered with iron-gray hair cut short for practicality, her skin weathered by years of outdoor work. Margaret spoke little, but when she did, it was direct, and she had a way of making frightened people feel seen without ever asking them to explain themselves. She had once lost a family in a winter fire. Since then, she trusted preparation over hope. Leo grew quickly in that space. At 6 months old, he was already too large for his paws, his gait awkward and enthusiastic. His coat had thickened into a rich blend of black and tan, glossy now, no longer dulled by cold. One ear stood fully upright while the other lagged behind, giving him a perpetually questioning expression. He learned the routines of the shelter instinctively, where warmth gathered, which corners were safe, which voices meant food or calm. He slept lightly, always aware, but his eyes no longer carried panic. They carried curiosity. Ethan visited only once during the opening week. He stood at the edge of the property, hands resting loosely at his sides, posture relaxed in a way that would have seemed impossible months earlier. The lines in his face had softened, though the structure remained. Angular jaw, pale eyes, beard kept short more from habit than necessity. He did not linger. He did not step inside. He understood his role now. Some people were meant to build, others were meant to hold space. After Claire returned north briefly to close loose ends, she visited the cabin one last time. There was no ceremony in it. The structure bore the marks of winter, patched logs, reinforced seams, a roofline adjusted by careful hands. Ethan had worked steadily, replacing damage not as penance, but as maintenance. Repair, he had learned, did not require reflection. It required presence. They spoke little. Words felt unnecessary between people who had already trusted each other in silence. Claire left a thermos on the table, filled with strong coffee. Ethan nodded once in acknowledgement. Neither promised anything. They both understood that some connections did not need to be carried forward to remain intact. When Claire drove away, the road swallowed the sound quickly. Ethan stood in the clearing for a long moment afterward, listening to the forest reclaim itself. The place no longer felt like refuge or exile. It felt like responsibility without weight. Ethan stayed, not as a guardian craving purpose, but as someone willing to be found. He repaired fences after storms, cleared fallen trees from back roads, checked on neighbors who rarely asked for help. He did not advertise his past. Those who knew recognized it in the way he listened, the way he paused before acting. He kept his radio on at night, not out of fear, but readiness. Sometimes, in the early mornings, he walked the ridgeline above the pass where winter had once tried to erase everything. Snow still lingered there longer than anywhere else, stubborn patches clinging to shadow. Ethan would stand and breathe, hands loose, mind quiet. The ache in his knee flared occasionally, a reminder of a different war, a different loss, but it no longer dictated movement. Pain, he had learned, did not always demand escape. Sometimes it simply asked to be acknowledged. Months later, Claire returned quietly, this time not as a survivor, but as a steward. She arrived alone, hair pulled back neatly, her movements measured and confident. Leo bounded out of the truck before she could stop him, legs too long for coordination, tail cutting broad arcs through the air. He ran ahead, then circled back, checking distance, instinct already shaping behavior. Claire laughed softly, a sound that surprised even her. Ethan watched from the cabin steps. He did not call out. He did not move to intercept. He let the moment arrive on its own terms. Leo stopped several feet away, head tilted, studying the man with open curiosity rather than fear. His ears twitched, then settled unevenly, one upright, one not. He took a tentative step forward, then another, sniffing the air. The scent was familiar, anchored somewhere deep beneath new experiences. Satisfied, he wagged once, decisive, and sat. Ethan crouched slowly, careful not to rush the exchange. He extended a hand, palm down, offering space rather than demand. Leo sniffed, then pressed his nose against Ethan's knuckles, warm and certain. The contact unlocked something small and quiet inside Ethan's chest. Not grief, not regret, recognition. Claire watched, her expression unreadable, but soft. She understood now what survival had changed in all of them. Not who they were, but where they stood. They did not stay long. Some places were meant to be returned to, not inhabited again. As Claire prepared to leave, she paused once, looking back at the cabin, the trees, the man standing at the edge of the clearing. "If you ever need the second watch," she said, voice even, unburdened by obligation, "it's there." Ethan nodded. He did not say thank you. He did not need to. After they were gone, the forest settled into its familiar rhythm. Wind moved through branches without urgency. Birds returned cautiously, testing space. Ethan turned back toward the cabin, toward work that would never be finished, and did not need to be. Winter had taken what it could. What remained was not victory, but balance, and for the first time in a long while, that was enough. Sometimes life feels like winter, not because it is loud or dramatic, but because it is quiet, cold, and heavy in ways no one else can see. Bills pile up. Responsibilities don't pause. Loss lingers longer than it should. And many days, simply standing up and moving forward already feels like courage. This story is not about heroes who never break. It is about people who stay. Ethan did not defeat winter by force. He chose presence over escape. Claire did not survive because she was powerful, but because she refused to disappear. And a small puppy lived because warmth, care, and persistence, however fragile, were enough to carry one more moment. That is how real change happens in everyday life, not through grand victories, but through small decisions made when no one is watching. Choosing not to walk away when someone needs help. Choosing to try again after failure. Choosing to stay kind in a world that often rewards indifference. You don't need to save a life in a snowstorm to matter. Sometimes being the second watch means listening, sharing, or simply staying when it would be easier to leave. If this story resonated with you, it's likely because you faced your own winter, or you know someone who is facing it right now.